The afternoon sun filtered through dusty windows of Riverside Cafe. Golden light danced across weathered wooden tables where locals sipped their coffee and shared quiet conversations. In the corner of this modest establishment sat an old upright piano. Its black paint was chipped. Its bench was worn smooth by countless hands. Most days it served as nothing more than a place to stack magazines and lost umbrellas. Claire Thompson wiped down tables with practiced efficiency. At 30, she moved through the cafe with the quiet grace of someone who had found peace in simple routines. Her brown hair was pulled back in a loose ponytail. Her cream-colored sweater had seen better days but was clean and well-maintained. There was something gentle about her presence that made customers feel welcome without her saying a word. The usual afternoon crowd filled half the tables. Retired teachers graded papers. Young mothers bounced babies while catching up with friends. College students typed on laptops with textbooks scattered around them. But today was different. Today, Marcus Whitman had chosen this humble cafe for his impromptu meeting. Marcus was one of the city's most celebrated classical pianists. His concerts sold out within hours. His recordings topped classical music charts worldwide. At 45, he commanded fees that could buy luxury cars. His perfectly tailored suit and confident demeanor announced his status to anyone who cared to notice. He sat with 3 colleagues from the symphony orchestra. They were discussing an upcoming international tour. Their conversation carried the self-assured tone of people accustomed to being the most talented individuals in any room. "This place has charm," Marcus said, gesturing around the cafe with mild amusement. "Very authentic." His companions chuckled. They were clearly more comfortable in the city's upscale establishments, but Marcus had insisted on coming here. He claimed he wanted to experience how regular people lived. Claire approached their table with a fresh pot of coffee. "More coffee, gentlemen." "Please," Marcus replied. Then his eyes caught sight of the old piano in the corner. A slow smile spread across his face. "Tell me, does anyone actually play that relic?" Claire followed his gaze. "Sometimes, not very often anymore." Marcus leaned back in his chair, clearly entertaining himself. "I bet it's terribly out of tune. These old uprights usually are." "It was tuned last month," Claire said quietly. "Mrs. Henderson from the music shop comes by when she can." "Fascinating," Marcus said, his tone suggesting anything but fascination. He turned to his colleagues with obvious mischief in his eyes. "You know what would be entertaining?" Claire sensed where this was heading. She had learned to recognize when customers were about to treat the staff as their personal entertainment. Marcus stood up and addressed Claire directly. His voice carried just enough volume to draw attention from nearby tables. "Why don't you give us a little performance? I'm sure our lunch would be much more memorable with some live music." The request hung in the air like a challenge. Conversations at other tables began to quiet. Customers turned to watch this unexpected drama unfold. Claire felt heat rise in her cheeks. She was accustomed to being invisible. Being the center of attention felt uncomfortable and unwelcome. "I'm working, sir," she said politely. "I don't think that would be appropriate." "Oh, come now," Marcus pressed, clearly enjoying the spotlight he had created. "It's just sitting there gathering dust. Unless you're worried you might embarrass yourself?" His colleagues laughed at what they perceived as clever entertainment. Other customers watched with growing interest. Some seemed uncomfortable with Marcus's behavior. Others appeared curious about how this scene would unfold. Claire looked at the piano, then back at Marcus's expectant face, then at the dozens of eyes now focused on her. For a moment, the entire cafe seemed suspended in anticipation. "All right," Claire said finally. Her voice was steady despite the tremor she felt inside. "I'll play something." She untied her apron and folded it carefully on a nearby chair. The simple gesture somehow transformed her from service staff into something else entirely. She walked to the piano with measured steps, her posture straightened with each stride. Claire sat on the worn bench and adjusted its height slightly. She placed her hands above the keys but didn't touch them immediately. She closed her eyes. She took a deep breath. The cafe had fallen completely silent now. Even the coffee machine seemed to pause its usual hissing and gurgling. Marcus leaned forward with satisfaction. He was clearly anticipating an amusing amateur performance. Claire opened her eyes. She looked once more around the room. Her gaze lingered briefly on Marcus's table before returning to the keyboard. Then her fingers found the keys. The first chord emerged deep and rich. It filled the small space with a warmth that seemed to come from somewhere beyond the worn strings and hammered felts. The sound was not just music. It was a voice speaking a language that transcended words. Marcus's smug expression began to fade. His colleagues stopped their whispered commentary. Every person in the cafe turned completely toward the piano. Claire had indeed left them breathless. Where are you watching this video right now? At home, at work, or maybe in your favorite cafe? Let me know in the comments below. I love hearing from each and every one of you. 15 years earlier, Claire Thompson had stood at the crossroads of her dreams. She was 18 years old and had just received acceptance letters from 3 prestigious music conservatories. Her high school music teacher called her exceptionally gifted. Local newspaper articles featured her performances at regional competitions. Her future seemed bright and clearly defined. Claire had discovered her love for piano at age 6. Her grandmother had owned an old spinet that Claire would sneak away to play during family visits. What started as curiosity quickly became passion. By age 10, Claire was performing pieces that challenged students twice her age. Her parents, David and Margaret Thompson, worked hard to support their daughter's musical education. David managed a small auto repair shop. Margaret worked as a seamstress. Neither had attended college, but they believed in the power of education to transform lives. The family lived modestly but comfortably in a small house on the outskirts of town. Claire's bedroom walls were covered with sheet music and photographs from recitals. The family's old upright piano dominated their tiny living room. It was the most valuable thing they owned. Claire practiced 3 hours every day after school. She studied with the best teacher their budget could afford. She performed in every competition and recital within driving distance. Her parents attended every performance, beaming with pride from whatever seats they could afford. The conservatory acceptances represented years of sacrifice and dedication. Claire had earned a partial scholarship to her first-choice school. Her parents had saved money for years to cover the remaining costs. The plan was for Claire to study classical performance and eventually join a professional orchestra. But life has a way of rewriting even the most carefully planned futures. The crisis began with a routine medical appointment. Margaret had been experiencing persistent fatigue and unexplained pain. The test revealed advanced stage cancer that would require immediate and aggressive treatment. The diagnosis changed everything overnight. Margaret would need surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation treatments. The medical bills would be enormous. David would need to reduce his working hours to care for his wife and drive her to appointments. Claire's younger sister, Emma, was only 14. She was bright and talented but would need support and guidance through high school. The family's financial situation went from tight but manageable to desperate almost immediately. Claire made the decision herself. She declined all 3 conservatory acceptances. She found work immediately at a local coffee shop. Her musical training meant nothing to most employers. Her incomplete high school education limited her options. Her only marketable skills were her willingness to work hard and learn quickly. The job at Riverside Cafe had become available through Mrs. Henderson, the woman who tuned their piano. She knew the owner and recommended Claire as someone who would be reliable and pleasant with customers. The pay was modest but steady. The tips helped cover family expenses. Claire also began teaching piano lessons to neighborhood children. She charged rates that local families could afford. The work was satisfying but financially limited. Most of her students' parents were dealing with their own economic challenges. Her mother's treatment lasted 2 years. The family depleted their savings completely. They sold the car and bought an older, cheaper one. They moved to a smaller apartment. Claire's piano had to be stored in the garage because there wasn't room for it in their new home. Margaret eventually recovered, but the experience had changed the family's financial trajectory permanently. David's business had suffered during his reduced working hours. The medical debt would take years to pay off. Claire's dream of conservatory training felt like something from another lifetime. Her former classmates moved on to college and university programs. They posted photos from campus life in music halls on social media. They performed with orchestras and chamber groups. They studied with master teachers and attended master classes with world-renowned artists. Claire never expressed regret about her choice. She had made peace with her situation. But the loss was profound. Music had been her language since childhood. The piano had been her voice. Now both felt like memories from someone else's life. Her parents struggled with guilt about Claire's sacrifice. They offered repeatedly to find ways for her to return to school. But Claire understood that her family's stability was more important than her individual dreams. She had made her choice with open eyes. "Music will always be there," she would tell them. "My family needed me more than I needed a career." But privately, Claire wondered if that was true. Professional music careers required precise timing. They demanded continuous development and networking. Every year away from formal training made returning more difficult. The Riverside Cafe became Claire's conservatory now. She found satisfaction in providing excellent service. She took pride in her professionalism. She built relationships with regular customers who appreciated her attention to their preferences. The old piano in the corner became her only connection to her former musical life. Sometimes when the cafe was empty and she was cleaning nearby tables, Claire would feel a pull so strong it was almost physical. Her fingers would itch to touch the keys. Her mind would hear melodies that had no outlet. She never approached the instrument during working hours. It wasn't her place. She was staff, not entertainment. The piano belonged to a world she was no longer part of. Until Marcus Whitman's challenge changed everything. What happened next in Riverside Cafe would be remembered by everyone present for the rest of their lives. Claire's hands moved across the keys with a confidence that seemed to emerge from somewhere deep within her soul. She wasn't just playing music. She was speaking a language that had been silenced for too long. The melody that flowed from the old upright piano was achingly beautiful. It spoke of dreams deferred but not forgotten, of love that endures through sacrifice, of strength found in the most unlikely places. Marcus Whitman felt his breath catch in his throat. This wasn't the amateur performance he had expected. This was artistry of the highest level. Claire was playing Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, but her interpretation was unlike anything he had ever heard. She brought a depth of emotion to the piece that could only come from real experience with loss and recovery. The cafe had become a concert hall. Every conversation had stopped. Servers stood motionless with coffee pots in their hands. Customers set down their forks and turned completely toward the piano. Even the kitchen staff had emerged to listen through the service window. Marcus recognized immediately that he was witnessing something extraordinary. Claire's technique was flawless. Her musical understanding was sophisticated and deeply personal. She played with the kind of emotional authenticity that separated true artists from mere technicians. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a retired music professor who frequented the cafe, quietly pulled out her phone and began recording. She had spent 40 years teaching at the university level. She knew exceptional talent when she heard it. This performance needed to be preserved. As Claire transitioned from the Chopin into what was clearly her own composition, the emotional impact deepened. This original piece told a story that words could never capture. It spoke of a young woman who had chosen family over fame, love over recognition, service over self-advancement. The music built to a climax that brought tears to several listeners' eyes. Then it resolved into a gentle, hopeful melody that suggested not an ending, but a new beginning. When Claire finally lifted her hands from the keys, the silence stretched for nearly 15 seconds. Then the applause began. It started with one person and quickly spread throughout the cafe. Customers stood at their tables. Kitchen staff applauded from the service window. Even Marcus Whitman was clapping, though his expression remained stunned. Claire stood from the piano bench and gave a simple bow. Her cheeks were flushed, but her composure was perfect. She had just delivered a performance that would have been impressive in any concert hall in the world. She had done it while wearing a cafe uniform and serving coffee. "That was incredible," someone called out. "Where did you study?" Claire smiled politely but didn't answer. She picked up her apron and tied it back around her waist. The transformation from artist back to server was swift and complete. "I should get back to work," she said simply. "Thank you for listening." Dr. Mitchell approached her as she prepared to return to her tables. "Claire, I'm Sarah Mitchell. I taught music at the university for 40 years. That performance was extraordinary." Claire's eyes widened slightly. She recognized the name. Dr. Mitchell had a reputation as one of the region's most respected music educators. "Thank you, Dr. Mitchell. That means a great deal coming from you." "Would you mind if I shared the recording I made?" Dr. Mitchell asked. "I think people should hear what I just heard." Claire hesitated. "I'm not really looking for attention. This was just A moment. Sometimes moments are exactly what the world needs, Dr. Mitchell said gently. But the decision is entirely yours. Marcus Whitman remained at his table long after his colleagues had left. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had just witnessed something that challenged everything he thought he knew about music and talent. This young woman, whom he had dismissed as simple cafe staff, possessed artistry that surpassed many professional musicians he knew. That evening, Dr. Mitchell posted the video on her social media accounts with a simple caption. Sometimes you discover extraordinary talent in the most unexpected places. This young woman's performance today reminded me why I fell in love with music in the first place. The video spread rapidly through the classical music community. Musicians shared it with their colleagues. Music teachers sent it to their students. Local news stations picked up the story of the cafe pianist, whose impromptu performance had moved listeners to tears. Within 48 hours, the video had been viewed over 2 million times. Comments poured in from around the world. Professional musicians praised Claire's technique and interpretation. Music students expressed amazement at her skill. Regular listeners simply said the performance had touched their hearts in ways they couldn't explain. The Riverside Cafe received hundreds of calls asking about the pianist waitress. Customers began arriving specifically hoping to hear Claire play. The owner, overwhelmed by the sudden attention, wasn't sure how to handle the situation. Claire watched this unfold with a mixture of wonder and anxiety. She had spent years learning to be invisible. Suddenly, everyone wanted to see her. For the first time since leaving her musical dreams behind, she felt the stirring of possibilities she had thought were lost forever. But she also felt uncertain about what came next. 3 days after the video went viral, Marcus Whitman returned to Riverside Cafe. This time he came alone. His demeanor was completely different from the arrogant performer who had issued the challenge earlier that week. He looked humbled, almost apologetic. "Claire," he said when she approached his table, "I owe you more than an apology." Claire set down his coffee cup carefully. "Mr. Whitman, that's not necessary." "Yes, it is," Marcus replied firmly. "My behavior the other day was inexcusable. I treated you disrespectfully. I assumed things about you that were completely wrong. I'm deeply sorry." Claire appreciated the apology, but she sensed there was more coming. "I've been doing some research," Marcus continued. "I know about the conservatory acceptances you turned down. I know about your family situation. I know you sacrificed your musical career to take care of people you love." Claire felt her professional composure tighten slightly. "Mr. Whitman, my personal circumstances aren't really relevant to—" "Please let me finish," Marcus interrupted gently. "I want to make this right. I want to offer you something that could change your life completely." He pulled out a folder and placed it on the table between them. "I've arranged for you to audition at 3 major conservatories, not as a student, but as a special admit to their graduate programs. Full scholarships plus living stipends. You could start next semester." Claire sat down across from him without being invited. The offer was so unexpected that she needed a moment to process it. "Additionally," Marcus continued, "I have contacts with several symphony orchestras. Your performance the other day has already generated interest. There could be opportunities for guest performances, maybe even permanent positions." Claire opened the folder and saw official letterhead from institutions she had once dreamed of attending. The offers were real and substantial. "This is incredibly generous," she said finally, "but I can't accept." Marcus frowned. "Why not?" "This could restore everything you gave up. You could have the career you were meant to have." "Because it would be charity," Claire replied quietly. "You're offering this because you feel guilty about how you treated me, not because I've earned it through the proper channels." "But you have earned it," Marcus protested. "Your performance proved that you belong in the professional music world. You have talent that shouldn't be wasted serving coffee." Claire shook her head. "Mr. Whitman, I'm not wasting anything. I made a choice to prioritize my family's needs over my personal ambitions. That choice had consequences, but it also had value." "What value?" "You're working in a cafe when you could be performing in concert halls around the world." "The value," Claire said patiently, "is that I learned music isn't just about personal achievement. It's about connection, about touching people's lives in meaningful ways. My performance the other day mattered because it came from a real place. It wasn't about showcasing technique or advancing a career." Marcus leaned back in his chair. Then what do you want? How can I help you return to music? I don't need to return to music, Claire said simply. Music never left me. It just found a different expression. But you could be so much more than this, Marcus gestured around the cafe. Could I? Or would I just be another professional musician competing for recognition and reviews? Would my music still mean the same thing if it became my job instead of my heart? Marcus was quiet for a moment. What if there was a way to have both? Professional opportunities that also served others? Then I'd be interested in hearing about it, Claire said, but not as charity, as collaboration. That evening, Claire's mother called with news that both surprised and concerned her. Claire, I got a call today from someone at the university music department. They said a donor wants to fund a community music program and they want you to direct it. Claire felt her heart skip. Mom, I think I know who that donor is. They also mentioned opportunities for you to complete your formal education while developing this program. Part-time study, flexible scheduling. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes. Claire's family was clearly excited about the possibility of her returning to formal music education. But Claire felt conflicted about accepting Marcus's help, even in this indirect form. The next day, Claire asked for a meeting with Mrs. Henderson, the piano tuner who had become something of a mentor over the years. I need some advice, Claire said. I've been offered opportunities to return to formal music education and performance, but I'm not sure I want what I used to want. What do you want now? Mrs. Henderson asked. I want music to serve others the way it served me during difficult times. I want to teach children who can't afford private lessons. I want to bring music to places where it's needed but not accessible. That sounds like exactly what the world needs, Mrs. Henderson said. The question is whether you can do that through these new opportunities or whether you need to create your own path. Claire left the meeting with a new sense of clarity. She didn't want to simply return to her old dreams. She wanted to create new ones that honored both her musical gifts and her understanding of what truly mattered in life. 2 weeks later, Marcus Whitman made an announcement that surprised everyone in the classical music community. He was hosting a benefit concert at the city's premier concert hall. The proceeds would support a new community music initiative designed to bring musical education and performance to underserved populations. And the featured performer would be Claire Thompson. Claire learned about this through a phone call that came while she was wiping down tables during the quiet afternoon shift. Ms. Thompson, this is Jennifer Walsh from the Metropolitan Concert Hall. We understand you'll be performing at the Community Music Benefit next Friday? Claire nearly dropped her cleaning cloth. I'm sorry, there must be some mistake. Mr. Whitman specifically requested you as the featured performer. He said you discussed the details? After ending the confused phone call, Claire immediately contacted Marcus. When she reached him, her tone was controlled, but firm. Mr. Whitman, I never agreed to perform at any concert. I know, Marcus replied calmly, but I hoped you might consider it when you heard the full proposal. I'm listening. The concert will launch the Community Music Initiative. It's not about showcasing individual talent for wealthy donors. It's about demonstrating what music can accomplish when it serves others instead of serving careers. Marcus paused, then continued. You would be performing not as someone trying to return to professional music, but as someone who understands what music means to people who have to fight for it. Claire felt her resistance beginning to shift. What pieces would I perform? That would be entirely your choice, but I was hoping you might include that original composition you played at the cafe, the one that made everyone understand what authentic musical expression sounds like. You want me to perform my own music? I want you to show people what happens when music comes from the heart instead of from ambition, not just technical perfection, but real communication. Claire found herself considering the proposal seriously. This wasn't the charity offer she had rejected before. This was an opportunity to use her abilities in service of something larger than herself. If I agreed to this, she said, it would be on specific conditions. Name them. First, I continue working at the cafe until this program is fully established and sustainable. Second, the Community Music Initiative serves people from all backgrounds, not just those labeled as disadvantaged. Music shouldn't be segregated by economic class. Third, I have complete artistic control over my performance. Agreed to all three, Marcus said immediately. But there's one more thing. I'd like you to consider becoming the program's artistic director. Not because I feel guilty, but because you understand something about music that I've spent my whole career missing. The week leading up to the concert was transformative for everyone involved. Claire worked her regular shifts at the cafe, then spent evenings preparing for the performance and developing curriculum ideas for the community program. She chose a program that told the story of music's power to heal and connect. She would open with Bach's Prelude in C major, simple, accessible, but profound in its mathematical beauty. Then Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, the piece that had first revealed her abilities to the cafe audience. Finally, her own composition, which she had titled Second Chances, in honor of life's capacity for unexpected opportunities. The night of the concert, Claire stood backstage at the Metropolitan Concert Hall, the same venue where she had once dreamed of performing as a conservatory student. But now she was here as something different, something she hadn't known was possible. She wore a simple navy dress that her mother had helped her choose. No elaborate gown or flashy jewelry. She wanted the music to speak, not her appearance. Marcus introduced her to an audience of 1,200 people. His words were brief and focused on the mission of the Community Music Initiative rather than Claire's personal story. Tonight, you'll hear from an artist who understands that music is not a commodity to be consumed, but a language to be shared. Someone who knows that the highest form of musical achievement is touching another person's heart. Claire walked onto the stage to warm applause. She sat at the concert grand piano and adjusted the bench height. She looked out at the audience once, then focused entirely on the music. The Bach Prelude began simply, each note clear and deliberate. Claire played it with the precision she had maintained through years of private practice, but also with the emotional depth she had gained through loss and service. The familiar piece became something new under her interpretation. As she transitioned to the Chopin Nocturne, Claire felt the audience's attention intensify. This was the piece that had changed everything at Riverside Cafe. But performing it in this venue for this purpose gave it even greater meaning. The Nocturne built to its gentle climax, then settled into the peaceful resolution that Chopin had intended as a meditation on beauty emerging from simplicity. Claire played the final notes with complete confidence, but it was her original composition that truly transformed the evening. Second Chances began with fragments of classical themes, then developed into something entirely contemporary. The music spoke of dreams that evolve rather than die, of service that becomes its own form of artistry, of finding purpose through connection rather than competition. The piece concluded with a return to the opening theme, but transformed. What had begun as fragments had become a complete, beautiful statement. The metaphor was clear. Life's interruptions could become life's greatest gifts if approached with courage and creativity. When Claire lifted her hands from the keys, the silence stretched for nearly 15 seconds. Then the applause began, building to a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. But Claire barely heard it. She was thinking about the children who would benefit from the program this concert was funding. She was thinking about elderly residents in care facilities who would receive musical visits. She was thinking about the teachers she would train and the curriculum she would develop. Marcus joined her on stage for the closing remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, Claire Thompson has just demonstrated what the Community Music Initiative is all about. Music that serves others. Music that builds bridges. Music that reminds us of our shared humanity. He turned to Claire. I'm proud to announce that Claire has agreed to serve as the artistic director of our new program, designing musical experiences that will reach every corner of our community. Claire stepped to the microphone. Music found me when I thought my path was closed. Tonight, we begin ensuring that music finds everyone who needs it, regardless of their circumstances or background. The applause resumed, but Claire was already thinking about tomorrow, about the students she would teach, about the programs she would create, about the community she would help build through the universal language of music. How do you feel knowing the truth? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to Hidden Heroine so you never miss incredible stories like this one. 1 year later, the Community Music Initiative had become the heart of the city's cultural life. What had started as a single benefit concert had grown into a network of programs that touched thousands of lives every month. Claire arrived each morning at the renovated community center that served as the program's headquarters. The space buzzed with the sounds of children practicing scales, elderly citizens learning new instruments, and teenagers composing their first original songs. Her office walls were covered with photos from student recitals, thank you letters from families, and newspaper clippings about the program's expanding impact. But the item she treasured most was a simple drawing from 7-year-old Anna, showing stick figures playing piano together under a rainbow with the words, "Music makes friends," written in crayon. "Miss Claire," called Marcus, a 10-year-old violin student, running up with his case bouncing against his leg. "I learned the whole piece you taught me." "That's wonderful, Marcus," Claire replied, kneeling to his level. "Are you ready to play it for the community showcase next week?" Marcus nodded enthusiastically, then ran to join his youth orchestra rehearsal. The program had exceeded everyone's expectations. Children from across the city attended classes 6 days a week. Senior citizens participated in intergenerational ensembles with young musicians. Adults who had never touched an instrument discovered the joy of making music later in life. But perhaps most importantly, the program served people from every background. Wealthy families paid full tuition that subsidized scholarships for low-income students. The diversity created a community where musical passion mattered more than economic status. Claire still worked 1 shift per week at Riverside Cafe. The little establishment had become a cultural landmark rather than just a neighborhood coffee shop. Local musicians performed during evening hours. Music students earned money by providing background music for special events. The old upright piano had been restored to perfect condition and was played daily. "You know," the cafe owner had told her recently, "I always thought that piano was just taking up space. Now I realize it was waiting for the right person to bring it to life." Claire's family visited the center regularly, both as volunteers and as proud observers of her work. Her mother, now fully recovered and healthy, taught beginning piano to adult students. Her sister Emma, now in college studying music education, spent summers working as a camp counselor for the program's youngest participants. "You found something better than what you gave up," her mother said one afternoon as they watched a children's choir practice. "You found a way to make your music matter to the world." "I found something I didn't know I was looking for," Claire replied. "A way to turn my love for music into love for community." Marcus Whitman had become both a friend and a collaborator. His foundation provided ongoing funding, but more importantly, he had learned to appreciate music for its power to connect rather than its ability to impress. "I used to think music was about individual excellence," he confessed during one of their monthly planning meetings. "Now I understand it's about collective joy." The highlight of Claire's year came during the program's annual community showcase. The concert featured performances by students ranging from 5-year-old beginners to adults pursuing lifelong dreams of musical expression. Claire performed last, playing a new original composition she had written specifically for the evening. The piece incorporated melodies that her students had created during their lessons. It was a musical representation of community, collaboration, and shared dreams. As she played, Claire looked out at an audience filled with families who had found their way to music through her program. Children sat beside their grandparents. Parents held siblings who were too young to perform but old enough to appreciate beauty. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, whose video had started everything, attended as both a supporter and a participant, having joined the program's adult choir. "Claire," she said after the concert, "you've created something that goes beyond music education. You've built a community where people discover they have more in common than they ever imagined." Claire smiled, watching her students pack up their instruments while chattering excitedly about their performances and planning for next year's showcase. "Music was always meant to bring people together," she replied. "I just learned that lesson in a cafe instead of a conservatory." As the evening ended and families headed home, Claire sat at the community center's grand piano for a few quiet minutes. She played softly, letting her fingers find melodies that expressed gratitude, hope, and joy. The old upright piano at Riverside Cafe had taught her that music could be a private refuge. The concert grand at the Metropolitan Hall had shown her that music could be a public gift. The instruments at the Community Music Initiative proved that music could be a shared language for building the kind of world she wanted to live in. A simple chord, when it comes from the heart, can transform an entire community. Outside, the city hummed with its usual energy. But inside the center, surrounded by instruments and photographs and the lingering echoes of voices learning to sing together, Claire knew she had found her place in the world's great symphony. If you believe that talent and kindness always create miracles, please subscribe to Hidden Heroine. Let's spread these heartwarming stories together.